They laughed when I handed them my resume. Didn't even read it. To them, I was just some poor black kid with a dream. But what they didn't know was that the girl they dismissed would one day save their company.
I still hear that laugh sometimes.
It's strange, the way some sounds burn themselves into your memory like cigarette smoke in old clothes. That sharp, bitter laugh, the kind that doesn't come from humor, but from cruelty, echoes in my head whenever I'm alone. Whenever I start to doubt myself again. I had rehearsed my lines 100 times in the mirror that morning. Good morning, my name is Imani Rivers. I'm applying for the summer internship position. Here's my resume. Simple, polite, confident. I ironed my shirt 3 times. Wore my daddy's watch to look more professional. Spent my last $5 printing my resume on thick paper, the kind the online blogs said made people take you more seriously. I even made sure to smile when I walked into Whitman Tech HQ. But the moment I stepped into that glass elevator, surrounded by marble floors and white faces in sleek suits, my heart started screaming, "You don't belong here." Still, I walked up to the front desk, chin high, resume in hand. The receptionist barely looked at me. "Deliveries go through the back," she said, eyes still glued to her monitor. "I'm not a delivery," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "I'm here to apply for the internship. I have my resume." That made her look up. Just a flick of the eyes. But enough to scan me, top to bottom. My natural curls tied back, my Payless shoes, the tiny crack in my glasses. She buzzed someone upstairs. A few minutes later, Claire Whitman herself came down. Yeah, the Claire Whitman. Founder,
CEO,
TED Talker, tech darling of Forbes magazine. She looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion commercial, flawless bob, icy blue eyes, a cream pantsuit that probably cost more than our rent. Her heels clicked louder than my heartbeat. She took my resume between 2 fingers like it was a used tissue. "Imani Rivers," she said, her voice slow and syrupy. "And where exactly did you say you studied coding?" I smiled. I taught myself, mostly online, through Code Academy, YouTube, some open source projects. I also built a community help app that got a few thousand downloads. That's when it happened. She laughed. Loud. Hard. The kind of laugh that stings because it's not just at what you said, it's at you. The whole lobby turned. One guy near the elevator actually chuckled with her, like it was some inside joke. Claire turned to her assistant and said, right in front of me, "Oh, God, this is adorable. Look, she built an app. How very inspirational." And then she handed my resume back. Not with a "thank you." Not even with a "we'll keep it on file." Just a look. That look. Like I was a sad little girl playing dress up in a world too big for her. I stood there for a second, frozen. Then I said, "Thank you for your time," and turned to leave. My legs felt like they were made of glass. But what she didn't know was that humiliation like that, it doesn't crush me. It fuels me. Because I may have walked out of that building empty-handed, but I wasn't walking out defeated. I didn't cry until I got to the bus stop. Not when she laughed. Not when the receptionist gave me that fake smile on the way out. Not even when the security guard pretended not to see me as I walked past, holding my resume like a piece of trash I forgot to throw away. But once I sat down on that cold metal bench and the bus rolled past me without stopping because I didn't raise my hand fast enough, I just broke. Not loud. Not messy. Just tears. Quiet and angry. The kind you swallow because you don't want anyone to see how much it hurt. I texted my dad. "Didn't get it. I'll explain later." He replied with a heart emoji and "proud of you anyway." That man didn't even know what happened, and he still made me feel like I mattered. When I got home, the house smelled like bleach and old cooking grease. Daddy was in his work uniform, blue jumpsuit, name tag faded, mopping up a spill in the kitchen while humming Marvin Gaye. I didn't want to talk about it, but I didn't have to. He took one look at my face and put the mop down. "You gave it your best shot, huh?" he said. I nodded. He opened his arms, and I walked right into them. "You know," he whispered, "they can't see it yet. But you got something they'll never be able to ignore forever." I wanted to believe him. But that night, when I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, all I could hear was that laugh. What was so funny? That I dared to dream?
I could have stopped then.
Could have said, "Well, I tried," and moved on like they wanted. But something in me wouldn't let go. I needed to get close. Not to prove myself to them, but to prove something to me. That I didn't need their permission to become who I was meant to be. So I did something crazy. I filled out the application for a janitorial job. Same building. Different entrance. No resume required. A week later, I was wearing steel-toe boots and scrubbing toilets on the 12th floor of Whitman Tech. Funny how they wouldn't hire me for my brain, but they'd gladly pay me to clean their trash. Nobody recognized me. I was just the new girl on night shift. The one who moved quiet and kept herself. I didn't say much. Just watched. Listened. Observed. And learned. Those fancy conference rooms they used during the day? At night, they were mine. I'd sneak in after hours, wipe down the glass tables, and then study the white boards like they were sacred texts. Code, architecture, machine learning frameworks. Half of it I didn't understand. At first. But give me a laptop, a YouTube tutorial, and enough Wi-Fi, and I'll teach myself anything. They didn't see me. That was their first mistake. Some nights I'd hear the engineers arguing in the break room, talking about missed deadlines, bugs they couldn't squash, AI models that kept failing their accuracy tests. I'd jot down everything I could remember. Then I'd go home, rebuild the problem in a free sandbox environment, and fix it, just to see if I could. And I could. Weeks passed. Then months. One night, I stayed too late. Got caught up fixing a buggy script I'd seen on the board earlier that week. I didn't hear the door open behind me.
"Hey,
"You're not supposed to be in here." I spun around. My heart dropped. It was one of the junior developers, a guy I'd seen before but never spoken to. I was just cleaning," I stammered. "Cleaning with a code editor open?" He stepped forward, narrowed his eyes, and looked at the screen.
Wait.
"Is that the deep lens script?" I nodded slowly, already bracing for him to call security. But he didn't. Instead, he leaned over my shoulder. "What did you do to it?" "It's not erroring out anymore." I tweaked the inference pipeline. The model was misclassifying due to biased input data. I rebalanced the training set. Silence. Then he said something I didn't expect. "Do that again." And just like that, everything changed. He brought me into the next sprint meeting. Not officially. I wasn't on the team. But I was in the back, taking notes, eyes wide, heart pounding. They argued for 30 minutes over a failing endpoint. I raised my hand. They ignored me. So I emailed the fix that night. And by morning, it worked. No one believed it was me. At first. "Must have been a fluke," someone muttered. Until I did it again. And again. The whispers started. "Who is she?" I thought she was just the janitor. Claire didn't notice me. Not yet. But the team did. They started asking me questions. Quietly, off the record. I never took credit. I didn't want a spotlight. I just wanted a chance. One night, after I'd squashed a critical memory leak that had been crashing their entire system, one of the senior engineers pulled me aside. "You ever think about working here for real?" he asked. I laughed. I applied. "Your boss laughed me out the building." His face dropped. "You're that girl?" I nodded. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, I'm going to fix this. No, I said, surprising even myself. I'm going to fix it, because I wasn't done yet. And when I stepped back into that conference room the next day, this time invited, laptop in hand, badge around my neck, Claire was there. Her eyes narrowed the second she saw me. You, again. This time, I smiled.
Yes. Me.
And I wasn't going anywhere. She looked at me like I was a glitch in her perfect system. Like I'd walked in off the street and ruined her reflection. Why is she here? Claire asked the room, but her eyes never left mine. I invited her, said Brian, the lead systems engineer, the one who'd started slipping me test data weeks ago, calling it training. Claire crossed her arms. This isn't a mentorship program. No, Brian said flatly. It's a fire, and she's the only one who's been putting it out. Claire laughed that same dry, dismissive laugh I'd heard on the day she crushed my resume between her French-tipped fingers. Let me guess. She's self-taught. Brian didn't blink. And better than most of your hires. I stood there, silent, feeling 100 eyes crawl over me. Judging. Measuring. Some confused. A few proud. And her?
Disgusted.
But I didn't flinch. Because I knew what was coming. And it wasn't me begging for approval. It was them finally seeing what they missed. They let me speak. For 5 minutes. I walked them through a memory allocation fix I'd patched. Not only was it saving the company over $20,000 in monthly server costs, they hadn't even noticed the leak. I had proof.
Logs.
Comparisons. Real data. By the time I finished, the room was dead silent. Until someone started clapping. Then another. And another.
Claire didn't clap.
She just sat there, fists tight. You still don't belong here, she muttered under her breath as I walked past her. You'll always be the janitor. I stopped, turned to her, and I said it soft but sure. Maybe. But even the janitor can clean house.
She didn't respond.
But something in her cracked that day. I saw it. Over the next few weeks, things shifted. Not overnight. Not all at once. But it started. Emails that used to go around me started CCNG me. Then direct. I got access to systems I used to only dream about. Claire fought it, of course. Tried to box me in, slow my progress. Until the press found out. It was one of the interns, some kid from a tech blog, who saw my code changes in the GitHub repo and traced it back. He reached out. Asked for an interview.
I didn't want it.
I told him no. But he posted anyway. Black teen once laughed out the door by tech CEO, now quietly rebuilding their AI infrastructure. The article blew up. Overnight, my inbox flooded. Journalists. Recruiters. Even old classmates. But it wasn't the noise that got to Claire. It was the board. Suddenly, the girl who wasn't qualified was being mentioned in shareholder calls. Suddenly, I was being invited to meetings Claire used to lead alone. Suddenly, her silence grew louder than her orders. And then came the panel. A diversity summit. Big tech event downtown. Whitman Tech was invited to speak on inclusion and innovation. The PR team pitched Claire. She pitched someone else. The board pitched me. And that's when she lost it. She cornered me in the stairwell the night before the event. You think this is your Cinderella moment? She hissed. You think this company owes you something because you snuck in through the service door? I didn't rise.
Didn't bite.
I just stared at her.
Calm. Still.
They don't owe me anything, I said. But they're finally listening. And that scares you. She laughed, cold, cracked. You're just a flash. You'll burn out. I tilted my head. And yet, somehow, I'm still shining. Then I walked past her. The next day, I stood in front of 600 people. Told my story. Not the polished, LinkedIn-friendly version. The real one. I told them about the day she laughed at me. About the nights I spent coding after cleaning. About my dad. His mop. His Marvin Gaye records. The way he told me I mattered, even when the world didn't. And I told him this. Sometimes, brilliance doesn't come wrapped in a diploma or dressed in designer suits. Sometimes it wears overalls, comes through the back door, scrubs your floors. But if you're smart, you pay attention, because the future isn't only built by those who had a seat at the table. Sometimes it's built by the ones they never let in. When I finished, the room stood.
Not all of them.
But enough. Claire wasn't there, but her boss was. And the next day, I had a title. Junior Systems Developer. Full badge. Full pay. Still not equal. Still not safe. But finally seen. They sent me flowers the day after the panel. Not Whitman Tech. Not Claire. Strangers. Dozens of bouquets. Roses. Lilies. Wildflowers I didn't even recognize. All with notes scribbled in shaky hands. You spoke for me. My daughter watched your speech. She cried. They told me I wasn't good enough, too. Thank you for proving them wrong. I stood in the middle of my tiny apartment, eyes blurry, floor full of petals, wondering how the hell a kid from Westwood High ended up here. And then my mom called. I hadn't heard from her in months. Is it true? She asked, voice stiff. I almost said, is what true? But I knew what she meant. She'd seen the video. Or someone sent it to her. Maybe Aunt Roz, the only one who ever stood up for me when I said I wanted to code instead of go to church. I guess, I whispered. Long silence. You embarrassed us. There it was. The punch I always knew was coming. You made it about race. About struggle. About your father. I didn't make it about anything, I said.
It was already about that.
I just told the truth. You painted us like we were ashamed of you. Weren't you?
I wanted to say.
But I didn't. I just said, I'm not looking for a fight. You could have called. I did. You never picked up.
Click.
She hung up. I stared at my phone, heart aching in that quiet, hollow way. The kind that doesn't scream. It just lingers. But before I could fall into it, another email pinged. Subject: Opportunity. It was from someone at Innovate West, a nonprofit that trains underprivileged youth in tech. They wanted me to speak, share my journey, help mentor. I said yes without thinking. Because that's the thing about pain. It can paralyze you. Or it can push you to make sure no one else has to carry it alone. The kids in the room the day I spoke were raw, curious, some cocky, a few closed off. But they listened, really listened. Afterward, one girl, maybe 14, walked up, hair in a puff, eyes sharp as razors. You talk like someone tried to erase you. I blinked. She wasn't wrong. They did, I said. But I wrote myself back in. She smiled. I'm gonna do that too. That moment stayed with me longer than any article, any headline, because it wasn't about being seen anymore. It was about making space. Back at Whitman, things weren't smooth. Claire was still there, still watching, still waiting for me to slip. One day, I walked into a meeting and found her going through my commit logs. Alone. Unsanctioned. You have a problem? I asked. She smiled. Just verifying her contributions. You mean trying to catch me slipping?
No.
Just surprise someone without formal training has such a clean pattern. I leaned in. Clean code doesn't come from degrees. It comes from doing the damn work. She sat back. Don't get cocky, sweetheart. Tech eats people like you alive. I didn't flinch. Then maybe it's time someone flipped the table. I reported her. Not because I wanted her gone, but because I was done playing nice when I was being sabotaged. HR launched an inquiry. Suddenly, she was nervous. Emails. Apologies. Let's chat over coffee. Pretending like it was all a misunderstanding. I didn't bite. Instead, I kept working.
Kept rising.
And then the unthinkable happened. I got an offer. Not just any offer. Vice President of Development. Another company.
Double salary.
They wanted me to build a pipeline. Recruit underrepresented talent. Build from the ground up. Claire found out.
Cornered me again.
Only this time, her voice shook. You're leaving? I looked her dead in the eye.
Calm.
Certain. I outgrew your limits. She blinked. You think you're some kind of trailblazer?
No.
I'm proof. That talent doesn't need your approval to exist. She looked like she wanted to say something else, but she didn't. I turned, walked out, and as I stepped into that elevator, I swear, I felt the air shift. The world wasn't fixed, but I wasn't invisible anymore. And the girl they laughed at? She'd become the woman they couldn't ignore. The elevator closed behind me, but I still felt her stare. Like she couldn't believe I made it this far. Like she expected me to crack somewhere between being dismissed and underestimated. But I didn't crack. I grew. When I stepped into my new office weeks later, floor-to-ceiling windows, my name etched in glass, I didn't think about revenge. I thought about legacy. And I thought about the ones who never made it to this floor. The ones still stuck in mailrooms with degrees they had to fight twice as hard to earn. The ones sitting in waiting rooms, praying someone looks past the skin and sees the brilliance beneath it. The ones like me, just trying to be seen. That's why I made my first hire before the ink dried. Her name was Talia.
Braids.
Brilliance. Fire in her eyes, like she had something to prove. I saw your speech online, she said when we met. I didn't think people like us got chances like this. I smiled. They usually don't. But we're changing that. Each day that followed was more than just work. It was a mission. Building something for the ones no one bet on. Turning rejections into runway. We launched a coding boot camp. Free for Black and brown youth. Mentorship included. Job pipeline ready. No resume shaming. No fake smiles from recruiters who'd already made up their minds. And the media? They came calling again. Not because I was viral, but because the numbers spoke. We were placing kids faster than most Ivy League programs. Because genius has never been exclusive to zip codes or last names. It just needed a door. One morning, while reviewing intake forms, I saw a familiar name. Zoe Claire Harper.
Yes.
That Claire.
Her niece.
Turns out the same Claire who once laughed at me for being unqualified had a niece looking for opportunity in the world I built. I didn't reject her. I interviewed her myself. She walked in stiff, defensive. I'm not asking for special treatment, she said. I know my aunt was a lot. I looked her in the eyes. Everyone gets the same shot here. If you're hungry, you'll grow. She blinked, stunned. Maybe expecting me to be petty. But we don't hold grudges here. We hold space. Because we know what it feels like to have none. Later that night, I walked out of the building just as the streetlights flicked on. There was a kid sitting on the steps, wearing a hoodie, tattered notebook in hand. You the one that started this place? He asked. I am. He looked down. I don't got straight A's. I don't even know if I belong here. I sat beside him. Neither did I. But I came anyway. He looked up, eyes shining with a mix of fear and hope. What if I'm not enough? I smiled.
Soft.
Strong. Then we'll build you into more. Because that's what this was always about. Not proving ourselves to people who already decided we didn't belong. But proving to each other, every black kid, every underestimated dreamer that we already do. If you've made it this far, let me speak to you now. Yeah, you. The one who's been told you're not ready. The one with the name that gets skipped over. The one walking into rooms that weren't built for you, but showing up anyway. This story? It's yours too. Because your pain can be power. Your rejection can be redirection. And your story is not over. If this touched your heart, if it made you feel seen, or reminded you what you're capable of, like this video, share it with someone who needs it. And hit subscribe. Because this is just the beginning. We're not just telling stories. We're rewriting the ending. Together.